All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm really excited for this next edition of the Principal's Office podcast because I have one of the best heads of schools, executive directors that I've ever worked with and been privileged to work alongside. But she's just an amazing human being, most of all. So I know you're going to love this episode. Uh, Jennifer Killen, she is the executive director at Piedmont Community Charter School, which is in Gastonia, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And she's going to take us through her journey through education and maybe talk about the penance that she has over her right shoulders there. Really, really proud of those opportunities if you're watching us on YouTube. And the reason why I wanted Jennifer to share with you all is, because she is an individual who, first of all, understands that leadership is not a title, it's not a position, it's about influence, it's about serving others. But she's also grown in one organization from being a teacher to an administrator to growing this school. It's almost, I think, almost a double the population. So we'll learn more about that in that time. But Jennifer, welcome. Thanks so much for adding value to everybody today. And whether you're a teacher or an administrator or a community member, you're going to get extreme value out of learning from Jennifer today.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the school first? Tell us about Piedmont's mission and what got you actually started there. So let's just talk about what Piedmont was when you first started teaching there.
Okay. Well, just to give a little background about me. I have a business degree. I started working in banking, and I worked at 3 different banks before I had both of my children. And then I wanted the opportunity to stay home with them for 5 years. So I started staying home, and we moved to Gastonia, North Carolina, and I thoroughly enjoyed my 5 years, but I wanted to get out of that house so bad. I was ready to go to work, but I didn't want to go back into banking. I was looking for a new career opportunity, and I was praying about that daily. So when my daughter started kindergarten, I started looking for an opportunity to substitute teach. So I applied at the local school system, and I actually made business cards, and I took them around to all the schools and asked if I could hand them out to the teachers, or if the receptionist would give it to the teachers. And I also handed some out to Piedmont Community Charter School. One of my friends' children went there, and I really didn't know anything about this school. But I did know that I wanted an option for my son because the district we were in, the middle school, was questionable, and I wasn't sure I wanted him to go there. So I was also, trying to find, just like all of our parents, a different option for my kids. I couldn't afford private school, but I wanted to see what was out there. So I started substitute teaching, and after a couple of months, I thought, you know what? I think I can do this. I'm enjoying this. And I loved the hours. I loved having, think the thought of having summers off. So I got a call from Piedmont to substitute teach. And gosh, by January of that year, they had a teacher assistant position open. And I was offered that, and it was with 6th grade. Now, mind you, when I was in school, I hated math. So in working with this class as a teacher assistant, it was 6th grade. I was helping the kids with math. It's like it just all came back to me, and I was really enjoying it. So that summer, the school director called me and said, "Hey, we just had a 5th grade teacher quit. I think you'd be a great 5th grade teacher." And I said, "Well, what subjects?" He said, "Math and science." I said, "Absolutely. I definitely want to do that." So I had to start going to school at Belmont Abbey. Wow. At night, and teaching during the day. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I immediately started my master's degree in school administration. I really found my passion, felt like that's exactly what my purpose was to teach students, and then hopefully eventually go into administration, because I love figuring out how to help a child learn. And my son, this is really what got me interested in teaching, was my son had a hard time learning how to read. And when he got to the first grade, his teacher called me in and said, Jennifer, I think your son's going to be retained in the first grade. And I was like, what do you mean? He was here for kindergarten. The teacher never said anything to me. And she said, no, he's just not progressing like he should. He didn't learn everything he needed to in kindergarten. I said, well, I tell you what, if you'll tell me what to do with him for 1 hour every day, I will do it. And she did. And by the end of that year, he was reading fabulously, had the highest AR points in his whole class. And I cried. I mean, I remember the day he learned how to read, or he was, so no, I'm sorry, I got a little nervous there. I remember the day that he read his first book by himself. And I still get emotional because I have that mental visual image of him doing that.
Wow. I love that story because I know it's going to resonate with a lot of educators, right? I mean, that's why a lot of us got into the role, is because maybe a family member, or we saw, or maybe we didn't feel we were helped, when we were in school, and we wanted to make an impact and make a difference. So here you are, you've got your business degree, and then you're like, hey, let me try this substitute teaching thing. And I like this. And then you go back to school. So you're working full time, you're back to school, you're a mom, right? And so then administration is the next step. So and then you talked about how you landed at Piedmont. Is you kind of came in as a sub, and then you came in as an assistant, then you came in as a sixth grade teacher. Was that the next step?
Fifth grade teacher.
Fifth grade teacher.
I also was, after my second year, but was made the curriculum coordinator.
Wow.
And I facilitated the alignment to the core knowledge curriculum. Mm-hmm. And me and a couple of other teachers went to some other schools and taught them how to do that alignment also. I really learned a lot about resources and how our teachers did not have all the resources that they needed. I mean, especially kindergarten. So I started, 2 subjects a year, really getting in the materials that we needed. So over a 3-year period, we had all of the core knowledge materials that our teachers needed for every subject. So that was a lot of fun, honestly.
Yeah. And that's so for folks who don't know, core knowledge is a widely used, curriculum. A lot of charter schools adopt it, right? It doesn't always necessarily align exactly to the state, standards. So you got to do some work there. So what you were doing is you were taking a pretty young charter school and really starting to build a solid foundational base of academics using core knowledge as your basic curriculum. And what I love about you, Jennifer, you're like me. We're both junkies when it comes to learning. So I hear you. Like my second year, I was already curriculum coordinator, and I was doing this work, but I was growing into the person that I needed to be to not only know and understand the curriculum, but how do I teach other adults how to? So can you talk about that, a process? What was some of your learning as you were growing yourself and say, this isn't just for me, I got to help other adults and the whole school, to be able to do this?
Well, I mean, I was on a steep learning curve because, I didn't have a background in education at all. I mean, honestly, if somebody would have told me the year before I started teaching that I would be teaching and doing all these things and running this school, I would have laughed out of the room because I had zero interest in education whatsoever before I actually did it. So I learned a lot very quickly. I remember my school director sent me to the elementary school conference that the state used to have. Mm-hmm. And I went to a session that Kathy Baumgartner was doing. And I knew that she used to teach here in Gaston County and was a big, trainer known to turn schools around and all. And I was just amazed at what she was teaching us. And it's like, the light bulbs were coming off about how to teach reading. And I read the book, Mosaic of Thought. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's like reading comprehension really came fully to me after reading Mosaic of Thought and learning how, my brain works and how to teach children how their brains work. It's just all so important. And I was just devouring, everything I could possibly learn. And what I realized is in your teacher ed programs, they don't really teach your teachers how to teach reading. We have to teach them how to teach reading. And so professional development, I learned very early on is very important. But going to conferences, I mean, that can be nice and fun and kind of introductory, but you don't really get a big bang for your buck sending somebody to a conference. You've got to bring, or I feel like we've been successful because we have brought professional development in-house.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned early on that if I went to the training, I knew how to better communicate with the teachers and to make sure it was being implemented. So that's something we continue. Our administrators know if there is a professional development session on their campus, one of the school directors has to be in that training because it will not get implemented if it's not supported by the administration, because it's hard to implement something new. But what I've found is we have always majorly benefited from it by, having that model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you love, John Maxwell like I do, right? And so he's always talking about, leadership isn't taught, leadership is caught. So what I just heard you say is, yeah, sending people to a conference is good, but there has to be application. And when you bring it in-house, when you bring an expert like, Kathy, or I know you've got some other math experts, maybe you bring experts into your building so the whole staff, right? Or a good, chunk of them can really catch what we're trying to do here. And then I know it's a big part of your administrative team, when they go into classrooms, they're looking for those pieces and they give feedback specifically, right? It's on your walkthrough protocols, or can you talk a little bit about how you take now that professional development and make sure it's applied? And, because mastery takes time, right? It's not just, one and done is what I hear you saying.
Well, a couple of years ago, we created a literacy specialist position, and she started out in the elementary school for like 2 years. She knew that I wanted her position to grow into middle school, and that has happened now. So we really got PLCs embedded in our weekly practice, and that is where they talk about all the things that they've learned with the math training or the reading training and their planning. And so the school directors also, they do their best to attend those grade level PLC meetings. And then we also have, the MTSS meetings also where they're talking about the goals for all of their students and all the interventions that they're doing. So we've just got a great process in place, and we really could not do it without that literacy specialist.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, like you pretty much bring in the same people year after year, right? You're really trying to deepen and layer the learning rather than what we sometimes see in education is, hey, let's, bring in this expert one time and then the next year we're off to someone else. I mean, it takes 10,000 hours to master anything. Right? So it's really also takes a lot of that learning. And so how have you, okay, so let's, go back. So now you're teaching 5th grade, and then you get moved to, a curriculum coordinator, and eventually you become an administrator at the school, right? When did that happen?
I was actually curriculum coordinator while I was teaching. Okay. I think I worked like 2 periods a day on the curriculum coordination. And then I even worked during the summer and didn't get paid because I wanted to. I just wanted to get that alignment done. Yeah. But then I became, after 4 years of teaching, I became the assistant principal at the elementary campus. And at that time, we had through 8th grade in that same building. But I mean, it was a great experience. That's where I really learned how to put teams together, to look at every teacher's strength. And instead of trying to fix weaknesses, tried to identify everybody's strengths and build teaching teams that way. And I also tried to balance them with, a retired teacher and beginning teachers. I always tried to pair beginning teachers with people with a lot of experience, and so we could grow them. It really is all about figuring out, where they are and where in their areas of growth, and we all kind of help each other.
I love it. So at this time, Piedmont Community Charter, you are a K-8 or you're K-12 at this point?
We were growing the high school. It
Yeah, so
wasn't
you're still,
completely
so you're
grown
still
out.
trying to build it, right? So you're building it as you go. And I love what you talked about, building a team that completes, right? So you got, different types of individuals with different styles and experiences, and really understanding that you can't just build teams by just throwing people together. Right? It needs chemistry, right? It needs cohesion, it needs clarity. And so you were already doing this. I mean, how did you learn how to do this at that time? I mean, you're a very young admin at this time. I mean, where did you pick that up?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it evidently was just in me. I just didn't know it. I just kind of discovered it. And communication is big, but and it's not just how you communicate. You've got to make sure they understand what you're saying, because everybody perceives what you say differently. So I learned early on that I had to spend more time than I thought was necessary to make sure they were comprehending what I thought I was, very clearly communicating. Right. And, even to this day, and, I've been here, this will be my 21st year working at the school. I'm very highly aware that if I communicate something, I need to do it 3 different ways, 3 different times, whether it's, parents, staff, my admin meetings. I mean, we type up admin notes. It's just a running document for the year this year. So if the administrators need to go back and look at something we discussed, we make sure, everything is in there. But communication is probably the toughest part of the job.
It's by far the most important skill that I think leaders need. I mean, the lack of communication that connects with people is just the number one, challenge that I see in the broken relationships and the lack of execution at times, right? So here you are learning how to do it. You're growing teams, and then you're moving into administration. You've got your administrative degree. You're understanding that teams need to complete each other. We can't have the same personalities, and we need to build it. We need to be intentional with our professional development, right? So you're learning all these pieces. The school's growing to K-12. And then at that point, a little bit after that, I guess, the school's going through some challenges, and you get promoted to the interim executive director or head of school at that time. I'm not sure what the title was.
Head of school, yeah.
Yeah, of 2, campuses, a school that was K-12 and had probably what, 700 or 800 students, or were we up to 1,000 at that point?
Yeah, we were up to actually 1,200.
Okay.
At that time.
Yeah, so you're already over 1,000 at that point. All right, great. So, and then you got, because right now you're an organization that serves how many total students?
1,906.
19, and you got over 200 employees, I think, on the 3 campuses, right? Okay, so now we've got a here to there conversation. How did you get, right? How did you start to know and understand, okay, for me to get from here to there, for us to expand, because now you're in this beautiful high school facility as well. You've got I don't think I knew that you had all that banking experience, but it makes sense because you're so great with finances and making good, plans financially and, decisions. So now you're in charge of 3 campuses, $30+ million in assets, right? 200, plus employees, 1,900 kids. That's 3,800 parents, right? That's 7,600 grandparents. I mean, so can you kind of walk us through how you were able to start to make that move, forward, to get to, I don't know if you ever imagined that this is where you would be, but I mean, what were those first steps, moving the school from a good school to now the highest performing school in your area?
Well, it starts out with working very closely with my board of directors and my board president at the time. I mean, we started having board training. When I became head of school, we started having board training every July, and we have continued that. And we also have strategic planning in the fall. And that's really where it all came about. We sat down on Saturdays and said, what is it? What is it we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? How big can we get? What's the best way to do it? How many we want to build a high school, because we knew we were going to run out of space at the second location. I mean, it was a matter of time. Within 3 years, if we maintained our enrollment, we would not have anywhere to put all of the high school kids at the New Hope Road location. So we spent a lot of time, analyzing our budget, cutting where we could, making sure we were not wasting money anywhere. My CFO and I, Claire Wilson, we met with all of our vendors, and we, looked at 6 different 401k plans. We looked at all these different insurance plans. I sat down with a local HVAC company and said, look, I need a group of people that I can trust to tell me what's going on with my HVAC, to, look at all the roofs on the facilities. I got to get things under control, because they really weren't. The facilities were not under control. And so that company still works with us today. But we literally got new vendors, new vendor contracts, accounting firm. We got a new accounting firm, and we got all of our expenses under control except for one, and that was the health insurance. Mm-hmm. So we knew we needed to, because when we ran the budget projections, the rising cost of our health insurance was going to keep us from being able to get a loan to finance the building, because it was just out of control and unpredictable. So we contacted Representative John Torbett for our area, and asked him to write a bill so we could be included in the state health plan. And unbeknownst to us, some other organization had written a bill that would give that year or the next 2 years or something for charter schools. If they wanted to join the state health program, they could. Mm. So we were watching as the
laws, you have to start within your first 6 months, or you have to make that decision pretty quick when you open up. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because what was happening with us, our insurance costs were going up every year, minimum 20%. And then that last year, before we went to the state health plan, it was going to go up 40%, ended up being maybe 35. And we're like, we just can't maintain this. So we got on the state health plan as soon as it was approved. And this is kind of funny. After it got approved and we saw the legislation was passed, Claire immediately called the state health plan, and they're like, what are you talking about? We don't know anything about this. And she's like, well, we want to be first on the list. But at that point, we knew we could build the high school. We knew that we could financially build the high school. And then that process started. And luckily, our board president was an architect. So he led us masterfully through the financial planning and the building.
Yeah. All right. So I want to pause there, because there's so much that you just shared, and I know this is natural to you. But so what I heard is, look, cash is the oxygen that drives charter school success. It just is. You need it, right? And, folks think you could just go out there and raise money and write grants. Well, you need grant writers and, people who can raise money to do that. So the first way to be able to build more cash is to look at how we're spending our current cash. Mm-hmm. So you brought experts around you. You started to reevaluate the services that were coming to your school. You took the time, right? Say, okay, how much money? Because you wanted to put that money towards expansion, but also people development too. Because I know you have a giant professional development line item, which a lot of schools, their professional development item is like less than their water and sewer and trash, right? So it's like you got to invest in your people. not in all those other utilities. So you did that, and then your board got stronger, right? Because then you started to recruit board members intentionally about expansion. Here's where we're going, and your board chair had this amazing, talent and skill. And every year, you all have been intentional for, I know, at least the last 8 years of having this annual strategic retreat.
Mhm.
We talk about this is what the goals we set last year. This is where
Mhm.
we are. This is where we still see ourselves in the future. So then you were able to get that great USDA loan, right?
No, we got educational bond loans.
Oh, educational bond loan. All right. And that
Mhm.
was able to help you secure this amazing facility. And I'll make sure I drop a link in here so folks can see, see the pictures, and please come and see the school because it's just amazing. Where now you have 3 campuses, 1,900 students, serving there. And then you also have a wait list K-12 as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even after the 20th day, we still have 1,000 people
Yeah.
on the wait list.
I love it. Right.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about downtown Charlotte, everybody. Like, this is outside. It's another county outside. So it's not a megalopolis, but if people want to come work now for you, with
Mhm.
you and with what you're doing. And so you've really grown your administrative team over this time too, right? Because at one point you used to be, um, at one point, you were like in charge of everything. And now
Oh,
you've grown a team, where you have, principals on every campus, and they have assistant principals working under them. So as you're moving up and you're growing the organization, you realize I can't do it alone. So can you talk about how have you started to recruit your team and build your team? Because I know, your high school principal, Ernie, I mean, he was key in really growing and improving that, high school. So
mhm.
what were some ways you started to really go find talent around you?
Well, we knew when we hire assistant principals, we're very intentional. Is this somebody, that we can grow into a director position? I mean, that we look at it long term. I'm not just hiring for the moment. I'm hiring for the future. And since we do have a good reputation in the community, when we post an assistant principal job, we do get a lot of applications. And we've just been very, very fortunate to get the ones that we have. And when we hired Pam Huffstetler as an assistant principal, we hired her with the intent that she would take over when Mr. Bridges retired. So it has been a flawless transition.
Yeah.
And I moved up Sheila Richards from the elementary school to run the middle school. She has 2 great assistant principals, and now Miss White. She sometimes we hire within, and sometimes we hire outside of the school. It just depends on the need at the time and who can best fill it and who's ready.
I love it. Yep. So there's a lot of intentionality around it. You're looking for leadership capacity in people. But at one point, you weren't the most sought after organization. So is there any key things that you believe you did to really improve the reputation of the organization, where folks were now, they wanted to come to you rather you have to go to them?
Yes, I think there's a lot of things I've done over time, to help grow the school. And when I was an assistant principal, I kind of took on the responsibility of starting marketing. So I would create, we did a parent meeting every month. I ran a parent meeting every month. Sometimes, the school director would do it, but for the most part, I did those parent meetings. And I would send out invitations to the local daycare centers, Boys and Girls Club. And I would go around and meet like the daycare centers, because I wanted the parents of those 4-year-olds to know that we existed.
Yeah.
And I would put, on the flyers that we have a parent meeting, the second Tuesday of every month. And people came every month, and once we got big, now I only do them in January, February, and March. But because of COVID, we've only done virtual the past couple of years, but I do want to have hopefully this year 2 in-person ones, and then just record it and send it out to everybody that applies. But I can tell you, we went from when we went to an online lottery system, our applications almost doubled because parents didn't have to, come by the school to pick up an application. So that going to lotteries really, really boosted our applications.
Yeah. So you got out of your office, you made partnerships with local organizations, community centers. I know you did some work, I think, with the Y. You're a member of the Rotary, right? It's a very distinguished
Oh,
member
yeah.
of the Rotary. So you're out there, you're out in the community. You all did a billboard at a minor league baseball stadium too, right? Wasn't
We
that one of
did.
your branding pieces? And so all this continuous, folks are starting to see Piedmont. Like they're starting to, what is this? What is this, charter, with the Patriot on it? Like, what is this, right? So, branding is really important. And it made me think about, I'm working with a couple charter schools that didn't make their enrollment goals this year. And I thought about it, I was like, district schools, kids are just assigned, right? Unless you're a magnet school, and even they have a trouble. But as a charter school leader, you have to understand that you are a brand. And your reputation is critical in the community, and everybody who's in your organization is branding your school, your board members, your students, your families. So they're your top recruitment tool. So as you're growing to 2,000 kids, and that's a lot of people talking about Piedmont out there in the community. And that's really important, So, when you got your crest on and you got your athletic wear on, they're, looking at that, and that's what's also going to grow your school. But you also need to be good, right? You got to get good too. You can't just have a nice logo. You actually have to have some really strong, tangible evidences, So going back to your, strategic planning, there was academic parts, there was expansion parts, there was, what were some of the other areas of the focus in your here to there journey, right? So professional development, we've talked about hiring qualified teachers, getting great leaders, aligning the curriculum, right? I mean, so you've done all these pieces. Is there anything else that was really critical in your journey?
Yes. Getting stakeholder feedback, and we have a process in place, and we use the used to be called Advanced Ed, but Cognia now is the accreditation agency. That's the other thing we did when I was principal, or was I assistant principal? When I was assistant principal at the elementary school, I led our SACS accreditation, and it took us a 2-year process. But we got our initial accreditation, and I really wanted that for us to have that recognition, that we were serious, we were reaching to those higher standards, and we have renewed that twice since then. And also, our board created committees, so we have a finance committee that meets. All the committees just about meet the week before the board meeting. So we have finance committee, we have enrichment, where we look at data and statistics and discuss what's going on in the school. But that we have parents on there, board members, and like one administrator from each campus. We have a governance committee, and they look at policy. They meet once a month. Also, we need to start reviewing our policies and updating them this year. I think we're going to start with our personnel policies, and then do student policies. I know there's something else. We've had a safety committee before, but also it's important to get that as part of enrichment. That is the stakeholder feedback, and we do that every March. I send those Cognia surveys out, and then I sit down with the administrators and we go through it, and we're like, okay, let's not take this personal, because it does ask you like 2 positive. What do you like best about the school? What would be a suggestion? What do you not like? Right. And I'm like, some of these things might sting, but we need to read it. And one thing I read in this past years from the students, we didn't have enough stuff on the walls. Well, it was COVID. We were trying to survive. So Miss Huffstetler, she and Mrs. Richards at the middle school, both, and I think it was Miss Richards' idea first, they took pictures and got big canvases made of pictures of their students,
Oh,
and
love
they've
it.
hung them all over
Love
the
it.
walls, and positive messages also. So that's something we got from the survey. And then I saw that the high school kids were wanting to wear blue jeans. So I went to the governance committee and I said, I kind of have a wild idea. We need to change. I would like to change the dress code so that's a little different from middle school to high school, so they have something to look forward to. Because we already have some changes from elementary to middle. And I said, I just want those middle school kids to look forward to maybe wearing blue jeans. So I think that would be great for the morale of the kids. It would make them feel more like everybody else in the community. And so we did implement that, and they absolutely love wearing blue jeans.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes them feel heard, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's really important. I love that you're using the same survey every year and you're getting continuous, consistent feedback. I mean, it's a big part. Culture is based upon rituals and stories
Mhm.
and ceremonies. Well, this is part of your ritual. Every year we get feedback. Every year we sit down. I heard you tell one of our leaders in the inner circle after your 20th day of ADM, we're going to sit down and look at it. We're going to start our marketing plan for next year, right? I mean, you are just continuous. So when you've got things, I guess, in some sort of like a strategic calendar almost, right? We know when it's this time to do things. I know it's up top, right? But when we do things, like this is when we do, right? We evaluate, and that's where growth comes from. It's not about experience. It's not about doing things. It's evaluative experience. So you're taking, here's the initiative. This is what we did, and you're saying what went well, what went wrong, what do we need to do differently next time, and you're continuous. It is phases of growth. I love it. It's really, really important. If you're going to grow an organization the way you have to continuously look at your current reality and take those next steps, and say, yeah, some of this hurts, but it's a fact, but it's not truth. We can change some of these things. We can improve.
That's right.
Yeah. Excellent.
And I can definitely see a difference, especially at the high school this year. It's just been a whole lot calmer beginning to the school year, and I think it was the right thing to do to add the blue jeans.
And you're very transparent with your board. You share, you give some really great reports, and all of your board meetings are actually on your YouTube page, which I actually directed someone there recently. Said, I want to watch a good board meeting. I sent them to your YouTube page. I said, hey, here's one you can watch all the time, and they're making good decisions, and you've really, really grown that. So there's one thing I don't think I ever heard you mention, your communications team, because that's a really big part, I think, of your growth as well, that you have someone intentionally that their job on campus is to communicate internally and external pieces. Can you talk a little bit about how that came?
Yes. Well, back when we started strategic planning, we talked about, each of our board committees kind of did a study of what we were doing and, looking at survey data. And one thing that came out of that was that we needed a communications coordinator position. So we started out, and it was 8 years ago, with someone part-time, and she stayed with us and did a great job for a while. And then when she decided she didn't want she didn't want to work anymore in that area, she'd actually gotten a master's and was going to go work at another school, at a college level, communication. And we already had a technology facilitator, and she is incredible, but her background was in journalism. And so I went to her and I said, how about you take on an additional responsibility as communications coordinator? I said, you're such a good writer, and she really is incredible. I said, I think you can do it in a small amount of time. And I said, you're already meeting with the teachers weekly. All you have to do is say, hey, do you have anything for me for Facebook?
Right.
And just let that be an additional part of your job. Of course, we, renegotiated her salary and all. She's doing a phenomenal job. Phenomenal job. I hardly have to proofread anything she does. She's such a great writer. And we sit down at the beginning of the year and kind of talk about what we want to see. And this year I want more of a focus on our mission and our core values, being talked about. because we have so many new kids and we're finally out of COVID and so many new parents. I feel like we've just got to put more of an emphasis on mission and core values and include that in some of our announcements and our Sunday night messages, on our Facebook post, and just really educate our new staff members, our new parents, and our new students. One thing I do miss about being a teacher is I love teaching, but now I teach adults. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, I'm still teaching. I'm just teaching adults.
That's right. Yeah, that's what leaders do. I mean, you are constantly developing the people around you and working yourself out of a job, right? You're just building succession. And I love that you had intentionality around that, because 85% of people check their social media within 10 minutes of waking up, right? So imagine everybody out there, if every day, if you got your parents to follow your Instagram, or every morning they're getting hit with a core value message, right? A highlight of maybe of their child, about how the school is, impacting them. I mean, that would be amazing. So I love what you do, and I'm, one of your followers. So I totally enjoy seeing all the messages, right? So another great way to communicate your why you exist, right? And how we behave as an organization. Those are the top 2 questions to organizational clarity of the 6, right? Why do we exist? This is our mission. We are a college preparatory who uses core knowledge, right? Classical, all these pieces. This is how we behave. These are our core values. And this is what our core values look like when our kids do them, or when our adults do them, and we're highlighting those. So, but we just got a couple minutes here. So you talked about, what was the name of the book? You said it was The Mosaic of Thought. Is that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
read that many, many years ago.
So what are you reading now? What are you reading and learning now?
What am I reading and learning now? Well, would you believe? Here it is. I moved it over here. I have started this.
All right, you got the 21 laws. I love it. Yeah, the 21 laws of irrefutable leadership. And I don't know if you've gotten to law 1, right? But law 1 is the law of the lid. And it's just that the leaders are the lid to the success of their organization. So if you don't grow yourself, you're not going to be able to grow your organization.
That is exactly right. And there is one thing I do want to mention that we haven't talked about. And, as a leader, you have to get to a point where you do not let your problems derail you. You cannot get so emotionally upset over a problem that you let it derail you and rip you of your confidence in yourself. So I had to start thinking, all right, I get confronted with a problem. The first thing I say to myself is, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to learn something from this that is going to make us better. I'm going to learn something from this that's going to make me better, but it's not going to get the best of me. And once we figure it out, we'll put a new process in place so that it never happens again. And that's just something that a leader has to constantly do.
Yeah, that's an incredible message. And we're going to end there, because I don't think I could top that. And that is such a key important piece. And that's how you've gotten from here to there, honestly, right? You've taken every challenge head on, and you said, well, I need to learn and I need to grow. And I need to teach the people around me, and we're going to probably mess up some things, but we're going to learn from them, and we're just going to build a better system and a plan. And what I love that you've done, 21 years in one organization is incredible. So hands off, because you are an anomaly, especially in charter school world. But you have grown and built a team where Piedmont is going to be successful for decades to come, and continue to serve generations of kids. And the kids that you're graduating now will be the next level of teachers and leaders in the organization, and you've improved your county and community. I mean, there's so many pieces that you're doing. So I hope you take the time to recognize that you are an impactful leader. You've made an impact on me, and you've made an impact on, I know, all of our other principals that you help in our inner circle and our other groups. You're always very kind to lend a hand. And I know you're advanced ed. You go to other schools and you help them, kind of think through their challenges. And so you are a constant model of growth, and that's what leaders need it to be. So now there is one more thing. Do you want to celebrate you've got the 5 pennants? If you're watching us on YouTube, if you look over Jennifer's shoulder, she's got East Carolina and Upstate and UNC Charlotte. So take us through those real quick so we can celebrate all these other accomplishments for you and your family.
Okay, well, these pennants represent 0 debt in college student loans.
Nice. which we should all strive for. That's right.
That's right. So my father paid for me to go to USC Upstate. It was called USC Spartanburg. I paid for University of Phoenix and Belmont Abbey College because I had to go to Belmont Abbey to get my teaching credentials, and University of Phoenix for my master's in school leadership. And then my son went to UNC Charlotte and my daughter went to East Carolina. So after I sold my house and paid off all the debt, I got pennants and hung them on the wall.
Smart. I love it. Yeah. So you've got your, with your banking, degree or your business degree, then you got your education, and then you have your administration and your 2 amazing children, also, college graduates. So again, just building that legacy as we go. So everybody, I'll put the link in to the school, but if you get a chance, go to is it pccharter.org, and then
charter.org.
Yep, you'll learn more about the school, about their academics, about their programming. We could spend 9 or 10 hours really, diving deep, but come and visit the school, make a donation to their expansion programmings, and Jennifer and team will give you some time and really show you how to take an organization from here to there. It's all about getting clear with your vision, having a strategy, building your team, right? Got to put the adults around you, and you got to grow them as you're growing as well, and know that it's not going to run smoothly. And nothing worthwhile is right. Everything worthwhile is uphill, right? So no one's going to coast to success. And I know you've had some bumps and bruises, but you guys are so much better for it. So thanks for giving us time and adding in incredible value. So Jennifer Killen, everybody check her out, everybody, and congratulate her and her team on their success. So
thank you, Tom, and all you've done for us. We appreciate it.